Hello. Today we're starting a new book, Yellow Eyes, by Rutherford Montgomery, originally published in 1937. Chapter 1, The Hunt. Like a tawny shadow, the big cat slid through the mottled dusk of a thick strand of spruce and broke out into a thicket of twisted willow. From the thicket, she entered a grove of aspen and padded through its ghostly silence. She was headed for an open meadow, which spread just below the aspen stand. In that meadow she expected to find a buck and several does. The moon lent a pale whiteness to the silvery trunks of the aspens. In the dim glow, the queen cat passed like a yellow specter between the scarred trunks. Her lean shoulder muscles rippled in unison with the great cords of her lank hindquarters under a soft and yielding skin. Her wide paws were set down and picked up as silently as though no weight rested upon them. At the edge of the aspens, she halted and tested the wind. It blew cold with the crispness of the mountain night into her distended nostrils. She bared her fangs as the rich scent of deer was carried to her. The wind was right. Now she must select a spot from which to attack. Flattening herself upon her belly, she listened. Distinctly through the crystal air of the high country came the teeth champing of her quarry. Slowly, she raised her great head and peered out into the meadow. Waving grass, gray in the frosty light, spread before her. Her wide eyes peered intently, and four shadowy forms outlined themselves. Like a thing cased in iron, she stood and watched. There were a spikebuck, two does, and a monarch with full antlered head. The spikebuck held the big cat's attention for a long time. Then she shifted her eyes to the monarch, who was close enough to her cover to make a leap certain. Intently, the eyes of the killer measured the distance. 2 leaps would make it. The first would land her on a bare spot with its sure footing. The second would send her hurling upon him. Her nose muscles twitched a little, but no other muscles moved except the black tip of her tail, which snapped and twisted viciously. Again she checked the distance and the position of the buck. No cougar ever leaps without knowing every move which is to follow. The buck moved a little to the right, exposing his back to her. Slowly, her great leg muscles doubled, and her head flattened upon her big paws. For a minute, a full minute, she held that pose, like a strained steel blade. Her head rose, and she shot upward and out over the tall grass. She leaped a full 20 feet to land with her legs doubled under her. Her huge paws spread wide. Her claws sank deep into the firm black dirt. Then she hurled outward again. So silently was her attack that the monarch did not hear her until she landed the second time. He swung his head high and laid back his antlers. With a warning whistle, he leaped. That powerful leap had saved him many times before. Through his speed and strength, he had lived to boast a 10-point head, but this time he was part of a second slow. The slashing claws of the cougar closed upon his shoulders, and her powerful hind legs ripped his flanks to ribbons. White fangs reached for his neck as he staggered under the impact of the great cat. For a moment, it seemed he might shake the yellow demon from his back, for he was a powerful buck. Then the white fangs sank deeper, and he collapsed in the rank grass. Gurgling and lapping sounds rose from the carcass of the buck. The cougar was taking the choicest fruits of her kill, the warm blood of her victim. She was eagerly attentive to this rite, her eyes closed and her ears laid back. It was thus that Cougar George saw her as he stepped from cover not 50 feet from her. He had been after the deer himself, but this distance could not be passed. He jerked up his rifle and fired. Beyond the red streak of flame from his gun, a tawny form leaped high into the air and fell back, slashing and biting at her side. Cougar did not fire again. He was proud of his marksmanship and would not break a long record of dead shots by sending a second mercy bullet into the writhing cat. The she-cougar whirled around twice and sank to the grass. Her glazing eyes sought for the enemy who had struck her down, but she could not see him. She slashed out savagely before her muscles went limp. The queen cat had come to the end of the high country holds for its killers. Eagerly, Cougar George ran forward and stood beside the limp form. A wide grin spread upon his human lips. $100 bounty. Bending, he twisted the she-cat over on her back. Stooping lower, he whistled softly with much satisfaction. Sucking whelps. His lips drew in thoughtfully, and he rubbed his stubby chin reflectively. I can use your kittens, old girl. He gave the limp form a kick and rolled it over. 25 a head bounty. Besides, I can use them to train my pack of dogs. He fell silent as he set about skinning the she-lion. His mind was busy with plans for the killing of the cougar's kittens. They would be near at hand, and in the morning he would find them. He would bring up his green pack and let them handle the kittens. The little cougars could not ruin the dogs by putting up a dangerous fight, but they would have plenty of small cat smell. Cougar George jerked the last strips of pelt loose and stood up. As he swung the hide over his arm, a new thought struck him. Cougar had few new thoughts, and it took several minutes for this one to take form. He had removed a quarter of the buck deer and made a pack of it, together with the cat hide, before he had the plan clear in his mind. When he did realize how original the scheme was, he laughed aloud, slapped his leg. Picking up his rifle, he strode toward the cabin. As a predatory animal executioner, he had little use for any wild thing classed as a killer. To him, they were varmints to be slaughtered. His job was to train dogs and to kill any animal upon which the official seal of doom had been set. His new idea was a capital one and made him chuckle as he strode along. He would trap the kittens and take them to his cabin. There he would release them one at a time and let the dogs have their way. It would be great for the dogs and sport for himself. The cougar is a varmint, and the government seal of death is upon his tribe, so the hunter felt no touch of conscience. The last white rays of moon shone upon a bare, knobby knob below a rocky rim. A bunch of wire grass at the edge of the bare expanse wiggled, and a furry head poked itself into the open. The head was followed by another, and finally a third, smaller than the other two, appeared. The queen cat's kittens had waited long for her return, and they were very hungry. They had expected her call to pierce the still night, commanding them to come to the feast, but she had sent no call, not even the reassuring throaty cry which told them she had missed her quarry, but would soon find another. The three little fellows sat in the moonlight and grumbled. Yellow Eyes, largest of the three, and a marked leader, was very impatient. His golden eyes looked defiantly and unblinkingly down the hill, and his little spiked tail stuck straight up. Fuzzy, next to him, had more than his share of spotted woolly coat, and had a comical grin all the time on his round baby face. Runty was well-formed and active, but compared to the heavy-boned Yellow Eyes and the round Fuzzy, he was the runt of the litter. Yellow Eyes got up and padded across the bare knob. It was plain he was tired of waiting and was about to get something for himself. Fuzzy got up and followed. He would not have had courage enough to have disobeyed his mother, but for the leadership of his big brother. Runty still sat and whimpered deep in his throat furry throat. Seeing that his brothers were not coming back, he got up and ran after them. Into the spruce timber, the three orphans marched, unaware of the dangers that lay before them, and untaught in the hard rules of the high country. That's the end of chapter 1.